see anything except broken lines and words. I know what the words mean, said Faria. But first I will tell you the story of this paper. I was the friend and helper of Prince Spada, the last of the princes of that name. I was very happy with him. A long time ago, his family was very rich. People often say, as rich as a Spada. But my friend, Prince Spada, had very little money. He told me about another Spada. This man lived and died at the time of Cesare Borgia. Cesare Borgia needed money for his wars, but the country was very poor. Finally, he thought of a plan. He asked two famous rich men, Rospigliosi and Spada, to dinner. Rospigliosi was very pleased, but Spada was a wise man. Cesare Borgia wants my money, he thought. He will kill me. He wrote a note. Then he went to the dinner. There was death in the glass of wine in front of him. If I don't drink the wine, Borgia will kill me in another way, he thought. So Spada drank and died. Cesare Borgia took all the dead man's papers and the last letter that Spada wrote before the dinner. This said, I give everything to my brother's child, all my money and all my books. Tell him to keep the prayer book with the gold corners carefully. It will help him to remember his uncle. Cesare looked everywhere. There were some gold cups and a little money, very little, and he took those. But he could not find the treasure of the Spadas. Years passed. The famous prayer book stayed in the family, and my friend the prince now owned it. Like many people before me, I looked through all the family papers, through rooms full of papers. Where was the treasure of the Spadas? I found nothing. I read the history of the Borgia family. Cesare Borgia took all the Rospigliosi's money, true, but I found no information about the Spada treasure. I was sure that the treasure was still hidden somewhere. My friend died and left everything to me. He asked me to write a history of the Spada family. In 1807, a month before I became a prisoner, I was reading some papers. I fell asleep. It was evening when I woke up. The only light was from the fire. I felt for a piece of paper. I wanted to get a light for the lamp from the fire. I didn't want to burn any important papers, but I remembered a piece of plain white paper in the prayer book. I took it and put a corner in the fire. The fire began to burn the paper. Suddenly I saw yellow writing. I quickly put out the fire and looked at the paper. There were words on it. You could only read them when the paper was hot. I burnt a lot of the paper, but the last piece is in your hands. Dantes looked again at the yellow writing. And now, said Faria, look at this. He gave Dantes a second piece of paper with broken lines of writing on it. Put the two pieces together. On May the 25th, 1498, Cesare Borgia invited me to dinner. He wants to kill me. He wants all my money. When I die, give everything to Guido Spada. It is hidden safely on the island of Monte Cristo. Guido knows the place because we visited it together. All my gold and money are there. Lift up the 22nd rock from the beach at the east end of the island. Find the steps that go underground. Break into the second room. The treasure is in the northeast corner of the room. Cesare Spada, May 25th, 1498. Yes, Dante said. I understand. But the writing on the second piece is different. It is my writing, said Faria. I thought about it and completed the old paper. When I understood the words, I left immediately. But the government was afraid of me. When I went on board the ship, soldiers took me prisoner. Faria looked at Dantes. And now, my dear man, he said, you know as much as I do. If we ever escape together, half this treasure is yours. If I die here, all of the treasure is yours. You are my son. You were born to me in this prison. God sent you to help a sad old prisoner. Thank you, said the young man to Faria. But we will never have the treasure, because we won't leave this prison. My real treasure is your teaching and your wise words. Chapter 10. The Death of Faria. The days passed. Faria talked about his treasure, and he thought about ways of escape for his young friend. I am afraid that I will lose the letter, he said to Dantes. Learn it, every word. Then he burnt the paper. Faria could not use his arm and leg, but his words and thoughts were clear. He continued to teach Dantes history and English and ethics. He also taught him to make things, a useful skill for a prisoner. They were always busy. Dantes worked hard. He wanted to forget the past. One night, Edmund woke up suddenly. He heard a weak voice call his name through the darkness. He moved his bed, took out the stone, and hurried along the underground path. The other end of it was open. It was dark, but he saw the old, white-faced man holding on to the end of his bed in great pain. Ah, my dear friend, said Faria. You understand, don't you? You know that the time has come. Don't say that, cried Dantes. I have saved you once. I will save you again. He quickly lifted up the foot of the bed and took out the little bottle. There was still some red liquid in it. Look, he cried. There is still some in here. Tell me what to do. There is no hope, Faria replied. But you can try to save my life. Do the same thing, but don't wait too long. If I don't get better, pour the rest into my mouth. Now, put me on my bed. Edmund took the old man in his arms and put him on the bed. Dear friend, said Faria, you are good to me. You bring me great happiness. If you escape, go to Monte Cristo. Take the treasure and enjoy it. God go with you. Dantes waited, holding the bottle of liquid in his hand. When it seemed to be the right time, he poured a little of the liquid into Faria's mouth. Then he waited. He waited for 10 minutes, half an hour. Then he put the bottle to Faria's mouth and poured in the rest of the liquid. Faria moved. His eyes opened. He gave a little cry. Then silence. Edmund sat with his hand on his friend's heart. The heart became weaker and weaker, and then the old man's body slowly went cold. Dantes went down into the underground path and put back the stones behind him. He was lucky. A few minutes later the guard arrived. He went first to Dante's room. Then he went on to Faria's room with his breakfast and some clothes. What is happening in my friend's room? Dantes thought. I must know. He went down the underground path and heard the guards' cries. Other guards came. Finally, one of them said, the old man has gone to look for his treasure. I hope that he has a good journey. And now we can prepare him for his grave, another man said. Put him in a simple bag of plain cloth. That is enough for a grave at the Chateau d'If. Then there was silence. Perhaps they have gone away, Edmund thought. But I am not sure, so I can't go inside. After an hour he heard a noise. It was the governor, and there was someone with him. Yes, said an unknown voice, Faria is dead. I am sure that he is, the governor said, but by the rules of the prison we must check. Dantes heard more footsteps. People went in and out of the room. Then he heard someone pull a large piece of cloth along the floor. There was another sound from the bed when somebody put a heavy weight on it. In the evening, said the governor, at about 10 or 11. Shall we stay with the body? No, that isn't necessary. Lock the door. The steps went away, and the voices disappeared. Someone locked the door. Then there was silence, the deepest of all silences, the silence of death. Dantes lifted the stone. He looked carefully round the room. There was nobody there. He went in. Chapter 11. The Grave of the Chateau d'If. On the bed, Dantes saw a long bag of dirty cloth. The body of his friend Faria lay inside it. Alone. I am alone again, Dantes thought. And then he stopped. He looked at the bag, and a strange thought came to him. Only dead people leave this prison. I can take the place of the dead. There was no time to think about it. Dantes opened the bag with Faria's knife. He took the body from the bag and carried it along the underground path to his own room. He laid the body on his bed and pulled the bedclothes over its head. Then he kissed the cold face and turned it to the wall. The guard will think that I am asleep, Dantes said to himself. He returned to Faria's room, took off his clothes and hid them. Then he got inside the bag and lay exactly like the dead body. I have made my plan, he thought. Will the men discover me when they carry the bag outside? Will they find a living man, not a dead body? If that happens, I will cut open the bag from top to bottom with the knife. Then I will escape. If they try to catch me, I will use the knife. Perhaps they will put me in the grave and cover me with earth. It will be night. I only hope that the grave is not too deep. Another thought came to him. When the guard brings my evening meal at 7 o'clock, will he notice Faria's body in my bed? But no, I am often in bed when the man comes. He just puts the food on the table and goes away again in silence. If he speaks to me this time, what will happen then? When he gets no answer, will he go to the bed? Dantes waited for the cries of the guard, but the hours passed and the prison was quiet. Finally, Edmund heard footsteps outside. He must be brave now, braver than ever before. The footsteps stopped outside the door. There are 2 of them, Dantes decided. He heard them put down some wood. They are going to carry the body on that, he thought. The door opened. Through the cloth of the bag, he saw 2 shadows come to the ends of his bed. Another man stood at the door with the lamp. He was a thin old man, but he is heavy. One man was lifting up his head. The other man lifted his feet. "Have you tied it on?" the first speaker asked. "Not yet. We don't want to carry unnecessary weight," the other man replied. "I can do that when we get there." Tied it on? Tied what on? thought Dantes. The men put the body on the piece of wood. Then they moved up the steps. Suddenly Dantes felt the cold, fresh night air. The men walked about 20 meters, then stopped and put the body down. One of them went away. Dantes heard the sound of his shoes on the stone. "Where am I?" he asked himself. "Here it is. I have found it." Edmund heard the man put a heavy weight onto the ground next to him. Then he tied the weight round Dantes' feet. "Is that tied carefully?" asked the other man. "Yes, it won't come off," was the answer. The men lifted Dantes up again, and they began to walk. Now Dantes heard the sound of waves against the rocks. "We are finally here," said one of the men. "Don't stop yet," said the other man. "You know very well that the last one fell on the rocks. Don't you remember that the governor was angry with us?" They went 5 or 6 more steps. Then they lifted Dantes by his head and by his feet. "1," said the men. "2, 3, and away!" They threw Dantes into the air. He was falling. A heavy weight pulled him quickly down. Finally, with a great noise, he fell into the cold water. When he hit the water, he gave a cry. Then the water closed over him. "They have thrown me into the sea," Dantes cried to himself. "They tied a big stone to my feet. It is pulling me down to the bottom of the sea. This is the grave of the Chateau d'If. The sea." Chapter 12. The Young Amelia. Dantes was wise. He kept his mouth shut after that first cry of surprise. In his right hand he still held the knife. He quickly cut open the bag, got one arm out and then his body. The stone pulled him down and down, and he felt very weak, but he reached down and cut the stone free. Then he swam quickly to the top of the water, and the stone fell to the bottom of the sea. Dantes felt the night air on his face. He began to swim under the water, because he did not want the guards to see him. When he came up again, he was nearly 100 meters from the prison. Above him he saw a black and stormy sky. In front of him lay the great black sea. Behind him, blacker than the sea, blacker than the clouds, stood the Chateau d'If. It was a large and terrible place. The rocks around it seemed to reach out to take him back. And on the highest rock there were two men holding a lamp. They are looking at the sea, Dantes thought. Perhaps they heard me shout. He went down again under the water and stayed there for a long time. When he came up again, he could not see the light. He began to swim out to sea. He swam for hours. He was trying to reach an island. In 2 or 3 hours, he thought, the guard will go into my room. He will find the body of my poor friend. He will look for me and not find me, and then he will call for help. The soldiers will discover the underground path. They will question the men who threw me into the sea. They will send boats of soldiers to find the escaped prisoner. Everyone will search for a hungry man without clothes. Soldiers will look for me in Marseille, and the governor and his men will search for me on the sea. I am cold. I am hungry. I have lost my knife. Oh, my God, help me. Oh, help me. After Dantes said this prayer, he looked towards the Chateau d'If. He saw a small ship coming out from Marseille. It was moving quickly out to sea. It came near him. He shouted and waved his hand. The ship turned towards him and let down a boat. There were 2 men in the boat. Dantes began to swim to it, but he was too weak. He gave a cry, and one of the men in the boat shouted, "Be strong, we are coming." Dantes heard their words. A wave passed over him. He came up to the top of the water, and then he went down again. The water closed over his head. I am dying, he thought. Then someone caught him by the hair and pulled him up. After that, he heard and saw nothing. When Dantes opened his eyes, he was on board the ship. Where are we going? He thought. He looked out through a small window. We are leaving the Chateau d'If behind. The captain came to see him. I am a seaman, and I lost my ship in the storm, Dantes told him. You can stay on my ship, the captain said, but you will have to work. Suddenly, a loud noise rang across the waters. Hey, what is that? Cried the captain. A prisoner has escaped from the Chateau d'If, replied Dantes. Is he the escaped prisoner? The captain thought. He looked at Dantes. Does it matter? Even if it is him, he will be useful to us. The ship was called the Young Amelia. It carried goods to quiet shores on dark nights. There were no customs officers in these places, so the captain did not pay money to the government for the goods. At first, the captain did not tell Dantes about his business. I do not know this man, he thought. Perhaps he is a government officer. But after some days, he started to like Dantes. The ship reached Livorno. Edmund asked a man there to shave him and cut his hair. When the job was finished, he asked for a mirror. He saw the changes in his face. When I went to the Chateau d'If, my face was round and open. It was the face of a young and happy man, he said to himself. Now his face was longer, his mouth was harder and stronger, his eyes were deep and thoughtful, and his skin was whiter. Even his voice was softer and sadder. I don't know myself, he thought. I am a stranger. Next he went to buy some clothes. Then, a changed man, he went back on board the Young Amelia. The men of the Young Amelia worked hard for their captain. They spent very little time in Livorno. The captain wanted to get the goods out of the city quickly and to take them to Corsica. They sailed away. Edmund was happy on the open sea. I often dreamed about this in prison, he thought. Early next morning, the captain found Dantes. The two men stood at the side of the ship and looked at some great rocks. The sun shone in the sky and coloured the rocks a soft pink. It was the island of Monte Cristo. I can jump over the side of the ship, Dantes thought, and swim to the island in an hour. But if I do that, how will I get the treasure away? I must wait. I waited for years to be free. I can wait for a few months to be rich. He looked again at the island. Perhaps the treasure is only a dream of Faria's. But there was Prince Spada's letter. That seemed real. Dantes repeated the letter to himself from the beginning to the end. He remembered every word. Night came, and Edmund watched the island. It was beautiful with the colours of the evening. Then, slowly, it hid itself in the darkness. How can I reach Monte Cristo and bring the treasure back safely? The treasure is mine, but I have no money for a small boat to get it. He thought about this problem all the time. They returned from Corsica to Livorno. One evening in Livorno, the captain asked Dantes to come to an important meeting. Edmund went with the captain to see other ships' captains. They talked about a ship from Turkey which was carrying expensive cloth. They wanted to find a quiet place and meet this ship, buy the cloth, and then take it to the coast of France. "We need a quiet place where there are no customs officers," one man said. "A place where nobody will see us." "The best place is the island of Monte Cristo," said the captain of the Young Amelia. "Nobody lives on the island, and no customs officers ever go there." They decided to sail to Monte Cristo the next night. Chapter 13. Monte Cristo. And so, by a lucky accident, Dantes reached the island of Monte Cristo. The Young Amelia was first at the meeting place. Dantes was the first person to reach the shore. The men knew the island well. Dantes questioned Jacopo, the man who saved him from the sea. "Where shall we spend the night?" "On the ship, of course." "I must find the place where Spada hid the treasure," Dantes thought. "There is an opening somewhere, but where? Perhaps Spada hid it with stones, or perhaps it is now covered with trees and plants. But I must wait for the morning. Just then a boat arrived and came close to the shore. The business began. As he worked, Dantès worried. Did I say too much to Jacopo? Will the men learn about the treasure? No, his secret was still safe. Next morning the men rested. When Dantès quietly walked away, nobody seemed surprised. He climbed high, until the men on the shore looked very small. Then he found a path that was cut by a stream between two walls of rock. He followed it. The treasure is near here, he thought. As he went along the coast, he looked at everything carefully. These stones have marks on them. A man made these marks. He came to the 21st stone, and the marks stopped. But there was no opening, just one large rock. This rock is so big, I don't think anybody can move it. It is too heavy. I must start again. And he turned and went back to his friends. The men on the shore were cooking a meal. They were sitting down to eat when they saw Dantès. He was jumping from rock to rock towards them. All eyes turned to him. But then they saw him fall. They all ran to him, but Jacopo reached him first. Edmund was not moving. Is he dead? Jacopo thought. After some time, Dantès opened his eyes. My knee hurts very badly, he said, and my head and my legs feel heavy. They wanted to carry him to the shore, but when they touched him, he gave a cry of pain. Don't move me, he cried. The pain is too great. He did not want any food, but he told the other men to have their meal. I only need to rest, he said. When you return, I will feel better. The sailors went away. They returned an hour later. He is not getting better, one of the sailors said. His pain seems to be worse. I must sail this morning, the captain said to Dantès. Won't you try to get up? Dantès tried to stand up, but each time he fell back. With each fall he cried out with pain. He has broken his leg, the captain said in a low voice. But he is a very good man, and we can't leave him. We will try to carry him on board the ship. No, Dantès said. The pain is too bad. Don't move me. Leave me here. No, said the captain. We won't leave until evening. I don't want people to think that we left a good man like you on this empty island. But Dantès told him to go. No, no, he said to the captain. I was stupid, and I must suffer for my mistake. Leave me a small amount of food and an axe. I will build myself a hut. The captain turned towards his ship. It was waiting just off the shore, ready for sea. What shall we do? He asked. We can't leave you here, but we can't stay. Go. Please go, cried Dantès. We will be away for more than a week, the captain said. Then we will make a special journey to get you. Dantès spoke again. If, in 2 or 3 days, you see a fishing boat, ask them to come here for me. I will pay them to take me to Livorno. If you don't meet a fishing boat, please come back for me. Listen, Captain, said Jacopo. I will stay with him. You will say good-bye to your part of the money from this business to stay with me?" "Yes," said Jacopo immediately. A strange look passed over Dante's face. He pressed Jacopo's hand. "You are a good, kind-hearted friend," he said to Jacopo. "God will love you for your kindness. But I don't want anyone to stay with me. I will be all right." The men left the things that Edmund wanted. Then they went back to the ship. 2 or 3 times they turned round and waved to him, and Edmund waved back. "They are rough, dangerous men," Dante said to himself, "but they are good friends." He pulled himself up carefully to the top of the rock. He watched the ship leave. Like a beautiful white bird, it sailed out over the sea. Chapter 14. Treasure. Edmund climbed carefully down from the rocks. I didn't really fall. I wanted the men to leave me here. I don't want to fall and hurt myself now, he thought. He followed the line of marks on the stones again. They started from a small place on the shore. Only a small ship could land there. But Spada's boat landed here, Dante said to himself. The marks ended at the large, round rock. But, thought Edmund, how did Prince Spada lift this heavy rock into this place? 20 men couldn't move a rock like this. Suddenly, a thought came to him. They didn't lift this rock into its place. It fell here. He jumped from the rock to look at the ground above it. Somebody cut a path here and moved the rock down it. They put a large stone here to hold it in its place. Now the stone is almost hidden by the grass. But the rock does not fit perfectly. The holes are full of small stones and earth. Dantes cut away these small stones at the top, and after 10 minutes he put his arm into the hole. He took his axe and cut wood from a strong tree. Then he put one end of the wood into the hole and pulled on the other. The rock moved. Again he pulled. The rock moved from its place and then fell back again. Dantes rested. He gave a last strong pull. The rock fell down the hill into the sea. In the place of the rock, Dante saw a large square stone with a ring in the centre of it. He felt weak, so he waited for a minute. Then he put the wood into the ring and lifted the stone. He saw steps going down into the darkness of an underground room. But there was some light down there, and the air was fresh. Both the light and air came in through small holes in the rock above his head. Dantes looked into the corners of the underground room. There was nothing in them. He remembered the words of the letter. Break into the second room. He was in the first room, and he must now find the second room. He began to hit the wall with his axe. In one place, the sound of the axe was a little different. He hit it again. The hard rock broke away easily. Behind it there was a wall of square white stones. Somebody built this opening. Then they painted it to look like rock, Dantes thought. He felt very weak. He put the axe on the ground and went up the steps, out into the open air. I have not eaten any food for hours. I am not hungry, but I must eat. He ate a little bread and took a drink from his water bottle. Then he returned. He was able to use the axe more easily now. This wall in front of me is only made of stones, one on top of another. He pulled them off, one by one. Finally, Dantes broke the wall into the second room. It was smaller and darker than the first one. He waited for fresh air to fill the room. Then he went in. There was a dark corner to the left of the opening. He looked round this second room. If there is treasure, he thought, it is hidden in that dark corner. Dantes went to the corner and began to move the earth. Suddenly, his axe hit a hard place. He lifted the axe to hit the place again. Again, he heard the same sound. It is a great wooden chest. There are strong pieces of metal round it, he thought finally. He went outside. There he stood and thought. Then he took a dry piece of wood, lit it, and went down again. He looked at the top of the chest. It was about 1 meter long and half a meter wide. In the centre there was a piece of silver in the wood. There was a mark on the silver, the mark of the Spada family. The treasure is here, Dantes thought. He tried to lift the box, but he couldn't. He tried to open it, but there was no key. He took his axe to break it open. The top came away. The wood was old and soft. There were 3 smaller boxes inside. In the first box there were gold coins from many different countries. In the second box were bars of gold. From the third box, Edmund took a handful of gold rings. He touched, felt, and looked at the treasure. Then Edmund ran quickly back to the steps. He jumped up on a rock and looked out at the sea. He was alone, alone with this great treasure. Was he awake, or was it a dream? Chapter 15. At Marseille. The next morning Dantes climbed to the top of the highest rock. He looked for houses and men on the island, but there were none. It really was an empty place. He returned to the treasure place and went into the second room. He took gold and some coins and hid them safely in his clothing. Then he covered the chest with earth and put sand over the place. Nobody can see anything now, he thought. He put a large stone over the opening and covered it with earth. He placed some quick-growing plants in the earth. He went over the ground all round the place and hid every mark. Nobody will find this place. He waited for his friends to return. That was not easy. He did not want to sit and guard his great treasure. He wanted to return and live with men. These riches will give me great power. Danglars, Caderousse, even Villefort cannot hurt me now. I don't need to worry about them. With all this money, I can bring happiness to the people who are nearest to my heart. After 6 days, the young Amelia returned. Dantes went down to the shore. He walked slowly. "My leg still hurts," he said. "Did your business go well?" "We got the goods safely to land," the captain said. "But when we finished, a government ship from Toulon came after us. We needed you. You are a good sailor, and we needed your help. Luckily, night came, and we escaped. We have brought the young Amelia to Monte Cristo to get you." Dantes went on board, and the ship sailed for Livorno. In Livorno, Dantes sold 4 of the smallest rings to a shopkeeper. Edmund was afraid. "Will he ask where I found these rings? I am only a poor seaman." But the shopkeeper said nothing. The next day Dantes went to the captain. "My uncle has died and left me a large amount of money," he said. "I want to leave the ship." "I am sad to lose you," the captain said. "Can't you stay?" "No," Dantes said. "I must leave the young Amelia." He gave fine presents to all the men. He gave a new ship and some money to his best friend Jacopo. After that, he left Livorno and went to Genoa. In Genoa he saw a boat builder. The man had a beautiful little ship on the water. "I built this boat for an Englishman," the boat builder said. It was very small. "I can sail it myself, alone, without help," Dantes thought. "And it is very fast. No other ship on the water will catch it." Dantes offered a lot of money for the boat and asked the builder for the ship's papers. "The Englishman will not return for some time," the boat builder said. "I am sure that I can build another boat for him." So he agreed to sell the boat. He offered to find seamen for the ship, but Dantes said, "I don't need anyone. But make me a hidden place on the ship, near the top of my bed." The builder promised to do the work the next day. Dantes sailed away from Genoa alone, and arrived at Monte Cristo on the 2nd day. He took his boat to a different place on the shore. There was nobody on the island, and the treasure was still there. Early the next day, he began to carry his treasure on board. By evening, it was safely hidden in the secret place. One fine morning, a small but beautiful boat sailed into Marseille. Dantes tied it up near some steps. "I left Marseille just here, many years ago, to go to the Chateau d'If," he thought. The customs officers came on board to look at the ship's papers. A soldier stood near the steps. Even now Dantes was afraid when he saw a soldier. Edmund now had a different name, a rich man's name. He showed the officers the ship's papers. "This boat is owned by the Count of Monte Cristo," the papers said. The customs officers wanted to please the rich ship owner. "The Count can go on shore now, if he wants to," they said. "There is no problem with his papers." Old Nicholas, a seaman from the Faro, was one of the first men that he met on shore. Dantes went straight to Nicholas and asked him a number of questions. He watched the man's face carefully, but Nicholas did not know him. Dantes gave him some money and turned away. Soon he heard a shout. "Stop!" Nicholas called. Dantes turned back. "This coin is gold, not silver," said the good man. "It is too much." "Yes, my good man," said Dantes. I made a small mistake. Thank you for telling me. Here, take this second gold coin." Nicholas was surprised. He could not speak. Dantes continued on his way. Every tree, every street brought back memories of the past. He walked until he saw his father's house. The door was shut, but from inside he heard the sound of quietly moving feet. Then there was a silence that was broken by a weak cry of pain. Someone said very softly, "Yes, soon, very soon now, but you must be strong." Dantes put out his hand to open the door, but his hand fell back to his side. He could not move. "But I tell you, he is here," said the weak voice again. "Go and call him in. Try to get a little sleep now. Perhaps when you wake, I tell you, he is here. I saw him come up the street. I saw him stand and look up at this window with his dear eyes. He has changed. Tell him to come quickly. Tell him that death is waiting at my side." The voice grew stronger. "Open the door, I say, and bring him in." There were footsteps. The door opened slowly, and Mercedes stood there. She saw him. At first she did not know him. Then she fell forward with a cry. "It is you!" she cried. Then taking his hand she pulled him into the room. "Come quickly, he wants to see you." The old eyes looked up at him, dark and beautiful, with a last silent look of love. Then the eyes closed. "Kiss me," he said. "Hold me in your arms, Edmund. Death, you can come and take me now." Napoleon returned to France in 1815. Danglars left the country, and nobody saw him again. "Caderousse is still alive," said Mercedes, "but he is very poor." "Look," said old Nicholas to a soldier standing by the steps. Far away on the Mediterranean Sea there was a white sail. "He has gone," said old Nicholas. "That rich count?" "Yes, I saw him go," replied the soldier. "And her?"